Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. I hope you've been staying safe and healthy in the midst of this COVID crisis. And this week my guest is Susan Kistler, and she runs the Etsy shops Rocky Loves Lulu and Specs Optical. And we're going to talk about both of them and her journey on Etsy. So Susan, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Ijama.
So before we start our conversation, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you onto Etsy to begin with?
Well, I feel like I have a very mixed background from like finance and the computer industry, but I've always loved sewing since I was quite young. I'm 67, but I started sewing when I was 10. And I've toyed with doing a number of different creative businesses like designing clothes and making things. And I have sold things on eBay for a very long time, but Etsy is just so easy and more of a maker community. And so I began selling like surplus sewing supplies many years ago in 2008. I opened the Spec Shop in 2013, primarily selling vintage, never worn eyewear, and then opened Rocky Loves Lulu in 2015, intending to make dog supplies like collars.
Okay.
But it's kind of changed recently, which is the reason we're primarily chatting, because Etsy put out a call for people to make masks for COVID. Yeah. And the shop has kind of taken off since in the last month, since the beginning of April when I started doing that.
Yeah. And so let me give some background and context to the conversation we're going to have. At the time of this recording, it's May of 2020, and we're right in the midst of the whole COVID crisis. And over the last couple of months, or sometime within the last couple of months, Etsy sent an email to all sellers asking those who are able to make face masks for the general population to do so, because they could see, they were forecasting that the masks that they had on their website were not going to meet the demand. And so some sellers jumped on that, went with the, I don't want to say that charge, but to follow the request and started sewing face masks. And Susan is one of them. And some very dramatic things happened in her Etsy shop. And so we wanted to talk about that on this podcast. And so initially, you opened Rocky Loves Lulu, which is the shop that you sell the masks from, to sell dog collars. How was the shop doing prior to you starting to sell the face masks?
Well, it was pretty underwhelming. And honestly, I never got around to doing so much in terms of dog accoutrement. I ended up selling more fabric, which I had become a wholesale fabric customer, also intending to do something I didn't quite get into, to make women's dresses. So I thought, okay, I have too much fabric, I'm going to sell it. And I had made maybe 100 sales over the last 3 years and sold about $1,500 worth of product in that entire time. And then things changed after I started doing the masks.
What inspired you to actually start making the masks?
Well, it was really, I started making them because I have a lot of fabric, too much fabric, and as is a common problem among those of us who sew. Um, and I was able to buy a large quantity of elastic because there have been a lot of shortages in sewing products, and they're actually continuing. For example, there's shortages. It's almost impossible to buy 100% cotton large spools of thread. Elastic's gotten a lot more expensive and less available, as has I also make masks with twill tape ties. So part of it was I just started doing it for fun and for friends, and actually had some internal conflict about whether I should do it to make money, because I had considered doing it before Etsy put out the call, feeling that it was somewhat inappropriate to profit from a tragedy and an international tragedy. But when Etsy asked people to do it, I thought, okay, well, I have cute fabrics and kind of original designs, because I just cannot stand the ear loops. So somehow they don't work for me. So I did a different design that does not have ear loops and either has elastic going across the back or top of your head or ties.
Okay.
So
okay. So then you started selling the face masks. How many did you start off with in your inventory to begin with? Just were you trying to test the market first, or did you flood your store with masks?
Well, I know it's only been a month, but I guess my memory fails me, but I probably listed about 3 or 4 varieties to begin with. I relied on my daughter, who's in her early 30s. She suggested that certain fabrics, like Rifle Paper Company fabric, would be popular. And so I did that and a few others that I had, and just some things that I had made, and started listing them and then adding more and more.
How soon after you started listing did the sales start coming in?
I think I got a sale or 1 or 2 sales the first day, which I believe was April 7th or something like that. And then a couple more. And I remember actually from listening to your podcast that one of the things that's rewarded is more listings. And so the more I listed, kind of the more sales I got. So now I have maybe 20 different items. Some of the items have a number of different options within them, like for different fabrics that are related.
Okay. I see that.
And I try to keep adding more. In fact, one of the things I've done that's very interesting, because being a data person, I love testing things like this. Like I have 2 listings that are the most popular, and I've sold quite a few. And one is for Rifle Paper Company fabric, and the other is Lily Pulitzer fabric. And what I find is, like for Lily, I got some new fabric, added a new variety because I was getting low on one and it's not available anymore. So I've actually sold out of one particular design. And so I have a listing both for this new mermaid fabric on its own and as an option in a different Lily listing, and both are selling.
Do you think that those particular brands are selling because people are familiar with those names and they tend to buy anything that they make because they like the styles, or do you think there's some other reason that they're doing so well? Because I've heard of Lily Pulitzer and I know it has a following, but I've never really understood what it is. If it's I've never really understood why there's a following. Not to say that the designs are not nice, but does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it
Okay.
does. And I think I honestly was surprised at the popularity of the lily. I mean, part of it is that it's bright and cheery.
Mm-hmm.
The colors are it's kind of very pink, green, turquoise, yellow,
Yeah.
and then these times which are a little down, I can see the popularity, but they're also very popular. Like Lily is popular, and when Target has done collabs with Lily, those things sell out. So
Okay.
it's not terribly surprising that those would be popular to
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Now, rifle paper is another thing, and that has its own following. And when I look at the data on what people are searching for, a lot of times it's designer masks
Mm.
and some specifics for those brands, but for some reason those have tended to be popular.
Okay. Well, that's kind of good to know if you're designing um, accessories, to know what designs people tend to lean towards, because I guess that plays into the sales as well. Have you found that the patterns that you use that aren't from a known brand, like say just your regular gingham patterns, also sell as well?
They don't.
Oh.
And that comes from a company, Cotton and Steel, which manufactures the rifle paper company fabric, although people
Oh.
wouldn't necessarily know that.
Mm-hmm.
And Cotton and Steel has a line of designers. They're known for there was a dust up where the original Cotton and Steel designers left because of an issue with that company. Um, but they had some designers with quite a following in the quilting world, primarily.
Okay. So let's talk about the numbers, because that's what's really interesting. When we first started talking about doing this podcast, I was really impressed at what you've seen happen since you started selling the face masks. So just to rewind a little bit, prior to selling the face masks, over the 3 years that Rocky Loves Lulu was open, you'd made about 1,500, and then between April 7th and now, which is about a month, how much have you made from selling the face masks?
Almost $4,000. So
In a month.
in a month,
Okay.
right?
All right. I'm going to pause for effect. Okay. How did that happen? Yeah, that's all I can
Well, I
ask.
mean, I find it shocking.
Yeah.
It's Now we'll get into this a little bit because I think the numbers are going to change, and and I'm not quite sure how they count the numbers, but one of the things that 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 is affecting it is when I started out, for all the fabrics except for one, I was selling the mask for $12,
Mm-hmm.
offering free shipping, which cost me at least about $3. Um, I mean, there's some minor variations, but just in grocery store math, it's about $3 per mask. Um, so so a very high percentage, and then there's Etsy fees. So I am not positive whether the revenue numbers actually include the what's been taken out. Well, actually, I can look and tell you that. But about close to a third of the sales were actually going back to Etsy in either postage or fees.
Okay, and that
So,
was when you were rolling the shipping into the product price.
right.
Okay.
And I will say that as in many things related to Etsy, I've just kind of jumped in without a lot of thought. Even though I am a pretty analytical person, I have done it without a lot of reasoning, just thinking, well, some revenue is better than no revenue.
Right. So speaking of revenue, is the 4,000 net or gross?
No, gross.
Okay. So about a third of that went to Etsy.
Right.
Okay. Which is still what,
Well,
the net profit is still more than you made over the last 3 years.
oh, for sure. So I can't complain. It's still more than zero. And
Yeah.
basically, I was earning zero because of my real life paying job is seasonal part-time, and it was over.
Mhm.
And so,
Okay, so
better than
let's
that.
talk about how you determined the price for this, because prior to this, you weren't selling face masks. How did you arrive at the $12 that you were charging? And have you had to adjust and alter your pricing based on other external factors outside of Etsy? I'm sure because of the fees and all whatnot, that might influence the prices that you charge. But then also with people around the country now making face masks, the cost of your raw materials must have gone up and
Well,
whatnot. So
that's all true. So
okay.
yes, so I did some very preliminary looking at what people were selling masks for.
Okay.
And there are people selling masks for $5 and charging shipping, and people charging $25 and sometimes charging shipping. And I just kind of made a determination that 12 seemed like an okay number. And partly because of having listened to your podcasts and realizing that there was a positive effect from having free shipping, I just decided this is how I'm going to do it. So I did $12 per with free shipping. If you bought 4 masks, I would upgrade, that was first class shipping, that
Okay.
I would upgrade you at no additional charge to priority mail. And that if you bought 10, that I would do priority express, so overnight shipping
Okay.
at no charge.
Okay.
No one did that. No one has bought 10 at once, although I've had a lot of repeat customers.
Have
Um,
you had people buy more than one at a time?
Many,
Okay.
yes. But then what started to happen was I realized how popular both Lily and Rifle Paper were. I do offer other things. I'm cute, more fun prints, and still what I would consider designer quilting fabrics, but not as popular and not kind of the name brand. Um, and so I started having to buy more rifle paper fabric because I was running out. And it's become extremely difficult even to buy it at retail. And I had a wholesale account, but it's been just difficult to get it. So that caused my prices to go up. That was one thing. And then I realized that a lot of the supplies that I already had, like elastic and twill tape to make ties, was becoming less available and more expensive. So I was exhausted from making masks. So I decided to rethink my pricing. Actually, I had been listening to one of your recent episodes about, I believe it's a mother and daughter who make wreaths.
Yes, Colette and Cian of Ever Blooming Originals.
Yes. And they were talking about a product they used which I can't remember the name of, but was an alternative to just doing the math themselves,
Oh,
to come up
yes.
with product pricing. And I decided, I am just beat, and I am making money, but I thought the economics are changing because it's not like the sunk cost of the fabric I already own or the thread and supplies that I already own, I'm actually having to buy even more shipping materials
Right.
and packaging, because I had kind of a unique amount of inventory of many things such as that already, from having run an actual retail store. So I had way too much. So I decided to rethink the pricing, and what I've gone to is the Etsy model of free shipping if you place a $35 order,
Okay.
and otherwise charging shipping.
Okay.
Let Etsy calculate it. And
What did you find when you switched to that model?
well, that's only been a few days, like
Okay.
less than a week.
Okay.
And I did have a drop off for a few days, but I realize I'm happier
Mm.
and feeling less overwhelmed. So whether it's, I don't really know. It at the same time, and one of the things that I've observed, although I can't tell you 100% that this is correct, is that because I was feeling overwhelmed, I wasn't doing a good job of updating and adding new products, even though I was making things.
Yeah.
And that when I started adding new mask styles or just new listings, as opposed to just renewing
Yeah.
the same ones, that I feel like my orders have ticked up again.
Oh, okay. Okay. So to just explain for anyone who doesn't understand what we're getting at with this, there is a belief in the Etsy community that if you renew your existing orders, it will increase traffic to your store and, thereby, give the illusion of fresh listings. But what Susan is saying is that, and then if the Etsy search spiders see that your shop is getting new listings, then they come and crawl more or send more traffic to you because your items are fresh and updated. But what you're saying is that actually creating new listings from scratch, not renewing existing listings, is what has resulted in an uptick in traffic.
That's my belief.
Okay.
I can't prove to you that I'm correct,
Yeah. There's so
but
much we can't prove.
I believe that. And because what you've said, but maybe not as explicitly as I'm going to say it, is
Yeah.
in some of my listings that might have, say, 5 different Rifle Paper Company fabrics, and some of them in multiple colors. I might say that I have 20 available of each. So when you sell one, you actually get charged 20 cents to renew, even though you said you had 20, but once you've sold one and it goes down to
right.
19, you get charged as a renewal.
Okay, so it doesn't count as a fresh listing.
Mm-mm.
Okay, and so that technically won't count positively in the Etsy search algorithm that wants fresh listings.
Well, I think it has a benefit of some sort, but I almost stopped getting orders, I believe, a couple of days ago, and then added actual new listings, and they've started perking back up.
Yeah. So I sell on Etsy and eBay, and sometimes I just get mixed up how each one works, but I do know that holds on eBay. If I don't add new listings in regularly, I start to see a decline in the sales I get. But if I add even just one new listing, within a couple of days, I usually get at least 2 sales. And I've been able to corroborate that with my eBay shop. Not so much Etsy, but with eBay for sure. But I can see that being the same case on Etsy too.
Well, and again, this is anecdotal, and it sounds like you do a better job of actually tracking that on eBay, since I also sell but different things on eBay. I feel like once I sell something that I get more sales after one thing sold, even if I haven't added more listings on eBay. Um, Although I do think that it always helps when you add new stuff. And it's not always the new stuff that sells.
Right.
But I do think that you do bubble up in the algorithm.
Yes. And you're right. It's not always the new stuff. In fact, it's hardly ever the new stuff that sells. It's something else.
But yeah.
Okay. So did you do anything differently when you started selling the face masks? Did you do promoted ads? We now all have offsite ads, and we'll talk about that separately. But did you do any promoted ads for the face masks?
Yes, I randomly decided that I would spend $3 a day on ads. And so what has surprised me is, although they always do use up the $3
every
a
day.
Yes.
Okay.
Which again has taken away something, but not a ridiculous amount from my earnings. I mean, I think that's okay. But I think that I have only that it's only attributed 4 sales to the Etsy ads.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So 4 sales after spending, so over the course of, let's say, 1 month, $3 a day, that's $90, and you got 4 sales out of that.
Right. So it's not really worthwhile.
So is that something you think you'll continue doing?
Well, a couple of days ago, I did also decrease it to $2 a day, but now I just have to wonder if I should rethink it entirely, because when you look at it, you do still, it's a pay-per-click, so it doesn't mean...
Oh, it's pay-per-click.
So
even if it doesn't result in a sale.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know, that might be people who favorite the shop, who put it in their cart and don't complete a purchase, but then might come back later. So I don't know how it ends up counting entirely.
Have you been able to track? I know sometime last month, Etsy sent an email, and if you were affected, you probably got one too. An email telling you how many sales you'd received as a result of Etsy's offsite ads and what the cost was. And then also announcing that as of May 4th, you would be footing that bill. Did you get that email in April?
I did.
Okay.
I did. And I'm actually, as we speak, trying to find where that data is, because I'm having trouble finding it now, although I've...
in your Etsy stats?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see where I have that.
Okay.
So I think it said I would have been charged $18.
Okay.
Before May 4th.
Yes.
And I am not certain whether, let me see as we're speaking, if I'm able to find anything, if I'm able to find any numbers again about whether I've been charged myself.
Okay. While you're looking for it, let me just explain to anyone who is unfamiliar with the offsite ads what that means. And so earlier this year, Etsy sent an email to all sellers letting us know that they were going to be running offsite ads. So not promoted listings, but ads in regular search engines. And I think primarily Google. I don't know if they're running them on Bing or anywhere else, for our products. And any sales that result from the offsite ads that Etsy runs for us, if you make over, I think, 10,000 a month, $10,000 in sales a month, and I could be wrong on this, but something like this, over $10,000 in sales a month, you paid 12% commission. And if you made less than that, you paid 15%. Now, if you make over $10,000 per month in sales, then you're not exempt from the offsite ads. Etsy is automatically going to run them for you. And if you make less, they're not. Something to that effect. And
so I just found the thing on, if you don't mind,
no, go
I
ahead.
found it in my stats where it says shoppers clicked on your offsite ads 71 times and placed 0 orders for the last 30 days. Etsy advertises your items on high traffic sites including Google, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Bing to drive new buyers straight to your shop.
Okay.
You only pay when you make a sale from these ads, a 15% advertising fee.
Okay. So there you go. So if none of the clicks resulted in sales, you don't pay anything.
Apparently.
Okay. All right.
And
then if they do, you do. And I'm trying to remember what the cutoff is. There's a dollar amount for if your shop makes or made over a certain amount, they will run it. And then if it didn't, then they don't, or maybe it's that you pay a higher percentage if you go on.
The ability to opt out of offsite ads depends on your shop's sales in the last 365 days. If you made more than $10,000 on Etsy in the past 365 days, you'll benefit most from offsite advertising. You'll be required to participate for the lifetime of your shop, and you'll get discounted advertising fee. If you made less than the $10,000, offsite ads are optional. However, if you choose to use the service, you'll get advertising run by our team of experts without any upfront investment, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. Okay. That was it. And there's a page in the Etsy Help Center called How Etsy's Offsite Ads Work. I'll link to that in the notes for this episode. So if anyone is even more confused now about it, then you can read exactly what they said. But yes, that's what I was trying to say. I couldn't remember the details.
So obviously it's been of no benefit to me, but
yeah, I actually had to, I got the email and I got 4 sales from the offsite ads, and I can't remember what was but it wasn't $18. It was $5.24. It said I would have had to pay if after if it had been before, after May 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So on the one hand, I don't know. I like the idea that they're driving traffic. I don't like the idea that I can't control it.
I guess at this point, I still view it as an experiment. So I'm willing to kind of go with the flow and see what happens.
Yeah, me too. Now that's in Rocky Loves Lulu.
Yes.
Your other Etsy shop is Specs Optical. And
Right.
I'll link to that shop as well for anyone who wants to check it out. What's going on in that shop? Have you noticed any kind of traction there, or it's doing the same as it was pre-COVID?
Well, the same. And the honest truth is that I'm quite an Etsy slacker and have not done anything with specs, including monitoring whether my listings have expired. So that's done more business that's been open since 2013. I checked today before speaking with you that I'd done $11,000 in 6-7 years in that shop. So again, nothing to write home about, but still more than nothing. So no, I haven't done anything. I do think that if I were a little more active, then I could do something. But again, it seems to run in spurts, and I'll get like a few sales and then nothing. So.
Okay. Now, for either of your shops, do you do any social media promotion? Do you have an independent website that you use to either drive traffic to your your Etsy shops, or from your Etsy shops to your own site?
So Specs does have a website, because I did have for I don't know, like 15 years, I had an actual bricks and mortar store. I closed it about 4 years ago. But I did have a real store and had a legit website, which I still have, called specsnashville.com. But I've never done e-commerce on the website. And so I do see that it gets activity, and I still actually operate the business, but privately, just by appointment. So,
in the physical location?
I meet people privately.
Okay.
So I don't have a bricks and mortar store any longer.
Okay.
So in that one, what I do that is not in my Etsy shop is, I have some inventory remaining of contemporary eyewear. I do have the vintage frames that I sell on Etsy. And I also do, probably the most business I do is custom designed eyewear, made by a company in Germany. And there are hundreds of shapes and hundreds of colors they're all plastic acetate frames, and they will make them to fit you. So you can specify not only the style, but the eye size, the bridge size, temple length. And so that's a lot of people who are, some people who just want unusual eyewear, or people who have fit issues, like very tiny people or very large people who need specific things, do find me. And so
does the individual have to take all those measurements themselves?
Not exactly. I tend to work with people if they're not local, and I do have people whom I've never met, but I have a way by either finding out the size of their specific eyewear and getting photos of them wearing it. I'm often able to do it, and some people are familiar with this brand, so it depends. I'm pretty picky about who I'll work with, because I'm not able to return frames. So with like contemporary eyewear, I can return it, and with the vintage things, I'm happy to have you buy it, and if you don't like it or it doesn't fit, you can return it. But the custom eyewear is something that when I place an order, I'm unable to return it.
Okay.
And it takes about a month to get it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm pretty picky, because I don't want people to be disappointed, and I don't want to get into a difficult situation.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, how do you manage your time running multiple Etsy shops and just handling your business every day?
Oh, well, I know a lot of people who say things, who actually do this as a real business, and I kind of feel like I do it as a fake business. So this was never an issue, and I've put way too little time into this, including I have not Now, maybe by the time this runs, I will have done it, but I have not even done one Instagram post about my masks. And I need to, but I haven't. And I have an Instagram, Rocky Loves Lulu, where I primarily do funny little things that don't do anything to help my business.
So then I have a question. So then, is it your desire to grow the sales, or are you happy to just ride the wave for now, and then when it hits the shore, you'll just walk away or move on?
Well, are you asking about like the mask sales?
Yeah, yes.
Well, honestly, nothing would make me happier than to have the demand dry up, because there would be no need to wear masks. Unfortunately, I'm a little less sanguine about the need subsiding anytime soon. And and I kind of think that we're going to want a wardrobe of masks the way we have a wardrobe of shoes and clothing. And so I hate to say that I hope sales keep going.
That's okay.
I mean, I do have other things I do, and I have one part-time seasonal actual job and some other projects I'm working on. So I'm kind of happy where things are. And as I mentioned earlier, at a point, I actually felt a little overwhelmed by the number of mask orders, and that's why I decided to change my pricing model a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've heard anyone else say this on the podcast. I know other people have said that they've heard from, I guess, business leaders or whomever, when you can't keep up with the sales, or I'm not going to quote this quite correctly, but it might be time to raise your prices.
Well, that's really what ended up happening. Is I felt just it was too much, and that really what I needed to do, and that actually, because I had gone through a lot of my popular fabric, that and I was needing to acquire more, that it really was time to raise my prices a little bit. I mean, I only raised them by $2, but for the ties, because I needed to buy more ties, and then added the shipping. So
how long does it typically take you to make one?
It's really hard for me to say, because I tend to batch things. So there's cutting, there's sewing, there's ironing, then there's sewing. So I'll spend, like an hour cutting elastic or an hour cutting ties. So I mean, perhaps I can make 3 an hour. I don't know. Maybe I could make 4 if I were not needing to go walk the dogs or something like that. So it's, but I feel like some days when I was actually working more than 8 hours a day making, in all the various aspects of making the mask, that it became a little bit too much for me. The ergonomics of sewing are not fantastic. I have a bad neck and I'm older, and it just it's kind of like, okay, I need to make a change.
Okay. And so there's a feature that Etsy offers where you can send an email to people who have your products in their carts, and it's to help drive sales. I'm guessing right now you probably might not want to take advantage of that feature, but if you were in a place where it wasn't as stressful, is that something you think you'd be interested in? Because I see so many of your listings have 17 people have this in their cart, over 20, many of them have over 20 people have this in their cart of each.
Now I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that I have not even noticed that. So golly. So here's what I would say, and I might do that selectively. I don't have a lot of inventory right now. I make a mask or two to photograph to
Okay.
sell.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm having to just keep sewing to keep up with demand. So I would perhaps I would end up doing that at a point if I'm able to get ahead. And for things where I have sufficient inventory.
Yeah.
For many of the fabrics, particularly rifle paper, and honestly, like one of the Lily Pulitzer fabrics, I actually ran out. So, and it's not available any longer. So it's not as if I could even buy it again to restock. So I might, as a way to get rid of things that I already have made. So I think what I might do is use that for things where I have things made and they're not moving.
Yeah. Yes.
But
that would be a good strategy.
But
I can't help but think that someone listening to this might think, okay, if there really is this much demand, and I'll just reiterate that we're recording this conversation in May, even though it's going live in July. I don't think by the time anyone is listening to this, we will be past this COVID new reality that we're in. I don't think that the wearing of masks will have the need to wear masks will have dissipated. I don't think that will be. And if I'm wrong and this airs in July and we don't need the masks anymore, I'll be even happier because
yes.
that means something really, really good. But
Absolutely.
for that person who is listening now and is hearing that that you're not able to keep up, and many people have your products in their carts, and you're even hesitant to encourage them to buy because you don't have enough in stock, I have two questions. One, how do you feel about competition? And two, would you encourage other people who are able to not just put any old low quality product in the marketplace, but who can put something of good quality that will help with this demand? Would you encourage them to do that, or are you concerned about competition?
I'm really not concerned. I wish I were, but unfortunately, I think that there's a lot of need, and it's just not something I'm not worried about. And I feel comfortable personally that if the demand for what I have is not there, then I can just take it, and that's fine. But what I'm seeing is that, and unfortunately, that particularly with the kinds of fabrics that are the most popular for me, they're in very short supply. I mean, I'm having trouble buying any more rifle paper fabric, even at retail. So,
okay, and that's because that's one of your more popular designs, but not to say that that's all that people are buying.
Right. But I mean, largely, and part of it, I look forward to a break when I am a little more active in listing more new products that I have, because I have many, what I still think are awfully cute, different, but not as much of a brand name fabric. And that there may be things that are popular, like my daughter has encouraged me. She's really into Harry Potter and Disney, and wants me to do Harry Potter and Disney masks.
Okay.
I don't have any of that fabric, and that may be popular.
Yeah.
But as someone who's sewn, and I used to be very serious about sewing, and now I'm kind of recreational, although very precise, but I'm concerned about fabric quality. So that's kind of something else.
Okay. What's something that you're doing right now that you would say is working really well for you?
I have no idea. I think it's just dumb luck, that responding to Etsy's request for people to make masks.
Yeah.
That's really it. And I think if my demand fell off and I would do more, say, with Instagram, I'm sure that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I just haven't even done it. So it's just been fortunate. And I think the other thing I can do is attribute some good fashion sense or sense of what's popular to my daughter, who has given me, she said, you should do this and this. And so it's like, okay.
And it worked.
Yep.
Now, are there any tools or resources, educational or otherwise, or productivity resources that help you just run your shop better?
I really don't use anything like that. The only thing I can say, and I can thank you, your podcast for that, was some people who recommended getting a label printer. And I really, as silly as that seems, it just seems, this for shipping labels.
Yeah.
It seems so ridiculously simple. And for as many years as I've been selling on eBay, and because eBay, it's almost 20 years, and on Etsy, it's just a delight to print those labels out and not have to cut them out and use tape to put them on packages.
Yes. I too was one of those that when I saw the light of the label printer, I could not understand why I hadn't. I know why, because I tried one once and I could not figure it out. It didn't work. I just could not get it to work with my computer, and I got really frustrated. But then when I tried it again a few years later, I found a model that and plus I changed from a PC to an Apple computer, and it was just good about recognizing the software and downloading the drives and doing everything which I had struggled with on my PC. And that just made it so much easier. And now,
Yeah, and I'm a PC person, so it's super easy. I do wish, the only thing I can say is that, although I'm an iPhone user, I do struggle with some of the functions that some are and some aren't available on the phone that are available on the computer. And there are some real inconsistencies there in Etsy.
Oh, you mean with the Etsy app?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like what?
Printing. Just like if I get an order and want to print it out, so I print out like a packing slip, the order, so I know what I need to make. And I cannot seem to print the labels from my phone, but I can from my computer. And but the formatting of the order form, because I use it as a packing slip, and I'll write thank you and a little note with the order that I'm shipping. It just doesn't print correctly from my phone. But there's interesting things that are available on the phone that aren't available on the app.
Like what?
Like, because I have multiple stores, I don't have to log in and log out on my phone.
Yes.
But I do on the computer.
Yes, you're right. That's true.
And one really weird, interesting thing is that some photographs, if I try to upload them to Etsy from my computer, it will say that it's not of sufficient quality.
Mm-hmm.
But if I upload it from my phone, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why, but that's...
And it renders well when you look at it on the phone and the computer if you upload from your phone?
Mhm.
Okay.
Really, the whole thing, what I was trying to do because of an app I use sometimes to edit photos,
Mm-hmm.
um, although I've done a pretty bad job of it, was I was trying to include a photo of someone wearing my mask so that people understand that there are no ear loops.
Oh, right.
And that photo, because it's a picture of my daughter that her husband took on his phone that she sent me. And I just had it on my phone. And if I try to do it from the computer, it won't work. But if I do it from my phone, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't make sense to me, but
Yeah,
it's,
I don't understand that.
yes. As a computer person, I don't get it, but it's just true. So,
So, Susan, what advice would you give to someone listening right now who maybe also has a job outside of Etsy but wants to gain some traction on Etsy? What would you tell that person?
well, I just think that Etsy is such an easy platform to get started on, and don't wait to make it perfect. Just kind of do it. It costs 20 cents to list something. If it doesn't sell, you've lost 20 cents. I just think it's a great platform in that way. And so I just say don't wait for perfection. Just kind of go for it and see.
Okay. What's the best way someone can connect with you if they want to stay in touch after this?
Well, if you go, I mean, you can convo me through Etsy, through either of the shops. My
Okay.
email is skkistler@gmail.com. So it's SKKISTLER. On Instagram, which hopefully by the time this runs, I will have a little bit of a better presence. That's Rocky Loves Lulu. And yeah, that's,
Okay.
my specs website has a way to get in touch as well, and that takes you to my Etsy specs shop also.
Okay. And for anyone who is listening and you want to just quickly jump over, Susan's shop names are Rocky Loves Lulu and Specs Optical. And then I'll include links to all of them and her website for the Specs shop, which is specsnashville.com. I'll include links to everything in the show notes for this episode. Susan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I was very curious about just what the impact of Etsy putting out that call to folks to start making masks would be. And so I'm glad that I got to talk with you and hear about your experience and just what it means from a personal point of view of someone who actually did follow through and do that. I'm so impressed. I hope that while there is a need for it, that you continue to be successful in this way. But even more than that, I do hope that we get to a point where we don't need to wear masks again.
Well, I think that's what all of us have to hope for. And, it's a very difficult time and for the world, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank
Yes.
you.
Oh, you're welcome. I feel like we're ending on a somber note. But it's kind of what the time is. But the upside is that there is some good coming out of it. You have a skill that you're able to use and benefit other people. So thank you for that.
Well, that's a sweet thing to say. I mean, I do feel like it is a difficult time, and I feel somewhat conflicted about, earning money, but I feel that people are going to buy masks, and it's the wise thing you can do to protect yourself and
Yes,
others.
and
So,
others, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So that's what we need to do.
Yeah. So thanks for your effort. I thank you for listening to the podcast. Please stay safe and healthy, and I will be back next week. Just a quick update on the Etsy U workshops that I will be offering. Right now, our next training is going to be on Etsy search, which I know is a big deal and sometimes a source of much confusion among sellers. And so that will be one of the workshops that I plan to offer. And so just stay tuned to the podcast. If you're signed up on my mailing list, you will get an email for when that workshop will be offered. It will be a live training, so I will be training you live, and we will have Q&A, a question and answer session. And if there are any questions that you have that we don't get to, I'll try and cover everything, and hopefully it will be good. And you can connect with me on Instagram at convo.me_podcast. Or you can go directly to the website convo.me.com and use the contact form to send me a message or leave a comment on the post for this episode. Also, if you would like to be on the podcast, please do reach out to me. Again, you can go to convo.me.com and click on the Be My Guest tab. I would love to have you as my guest on the podcast. It's stress-free, it's fun, and it really helps me to have guests on so we can help other sellers in the community. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convo.me.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.